We're starting to get information in now about how Americans are reacting to the situation in Egypt. Let me review some of the key points for you. First of all, 69% of Americans say they are following news out of Egypt very or somewhat closely. That's a little above the median of 60 for all news stories that we have tracked over the last 2 decades, but nowhere near the top of the list in terms of news stories that Americans have paid close attention to. We did ask, what's the most important problem facing the country, February 2 through 5. Very few Americans mentioned Egypt in response to that question. In fact, only 5 out of the 1,015 we interviewed. We also asked Americans how important to the U.S. is what happens in this country, about 12 countries, and Egypt came in at 45%. That is, 45% of Americans said what happens in Egypt is vitally important to the U.S. That puts it at 9th out of the 12 countries that we interviewed, way below countries such as China, Mexico, and Israel, which is also in the Middle East. So we don't see signs that a huge number of Americans think that what happens there is vitally important. Now, what about overall reaction to what's going on in Egypt on the part of the average American? Very positive. This was an intriguing finding. 66% of Americans say what is happening in Egypt, including the possibility that the government will be changed there, is going to be mostly good for the country of Egypt. 60% say it's mostly good for the U.S. Very positive reaction there. And we also found an overwhelming number of Americans said they were at least somewhat sympathetic to the protesters who were trying to change the government in Egypt. So the bottom line is Americans may not think that what's happening in Egypt is vitally important to the U.S. However, the initial reaction on the part of Americans is generally positive to the changes that are underway in that country. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Gallup's Editor-in-Chief.